The rain hit the cracked pavement in slow, steady drips, like the world itself was mourning with him. 13-year-old Malik sat on the front steps of his house, his hood pulled up, shielding his tear-streaked face from the rest of the world. It had been 3 weeks since his mother passed, and yet it still felt like yesterday. Every morning, he woke up expecting to hear her voice, calling him for breakfast, only to be met with silence. Every night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the grief to loosen its grip. But it never did. His father, Mr. Carter, wasn't doing much better. He barely spoke, barely ate. Most nights, Malik would hear him moving around the house in the dark, sighing heavily, as if carrying a weight too heavy for his shoulders. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt like a shadow of what it used to be. Cold, empty, haunted by memories. One evening, Malik decided he couldn't take it anymore. He had to do something, anything, to feel close to his mother again. She had always been the glue that held their family together, the one who made everything make sense. And now everything was falling apart. Maybe, if he found a piece of her somewhere, he could hold on to it and bring some of that warmth back. He started in the attic. It was a place he rarely went, mostly filled with old boxes and dusty furniture. The air was thick with the scent of forgotten things. He rummaged through boxes labeled Christmas and old clothes, before finding one that had his mother's name written on it. His heart pounded. He knelt down, carefully lifting the lid, as if opening it too fast might erase whatever piece of her remained inside. Inside, there were old photographs, handwritten notes, little trinkets she had kept over the years. He smiled through his tears as he picked up a necklace he remembered her wearing every Sunday to church. Then, at the very bottom of the box, something caught his eye. A small locked diary. It was old, the edges of the leather cover worn and frayed. His breath hitched. His mother had a diary. He never knew what could be inside. He searched the box for a key, but found nothing. His fingers trembled as he ran them over the cover. His mother had always told him secrets had a way of revealing themselves when the time was right. Maybe this was one of those times. Determined, he took the diary downstairs and sat in the dimly lit living room, staring at it, wondering if he should try to open it by force or wait. But as he sat there, lost in thought, he heard something. His father's footsteps in the hallway. Mr. Carter paused when he saw Malik sitting there, the diary clutched in his hands. For a moment, an unreadable expression crossed his face. Sadness, fear, something else. Malik couldn't tell. "Where did you find that?" his father asked, his voice quieter than usual. "In Mom's things." "In the attic," Malik said cautiously. He watched his father closely, trying to understand why he suddenly looked so tense. His father sat down slowly, rubbing his hands together as if trying to warm them. "I didn't know she kept that," he admitted, after a long silence. "Your mother, she had secrets, Malik. Things she never told anyone, not even me." Malik swallowed. He could hear the nervous edge in his father's voice. What kind of secrets? His father didn't answer right away. Instead, he sighed. His eyes locked onto the diary, as if it held something too painful to face. "Maybe it's better if we don't open it," he finally said. But that only made Malik more curious. His mother never kept secrets from him. At least, he thought she didn't. If this diary was something his father didn't want to see, then maybe it held answers Malik needed. Answers about his mother. About why everything felt so broken since she left. That night, when his father had gone to bed, Malik sat in his room, turning the diary over in his hands. He had to know. He had to understand. His mother wouldn't have kept something like this unless it mattered. And so, heart pounding, he grabbed a paper clip from his desk and carefully worked it into the tiny lock. A few moments later, he heard a soft click. The diary opened. The first few pages were filled with familiar things. Memories of Malik as a baby, letters to him and his father, thoughts about life. But as he flipped further, the words changed. The handwriting became shakier, the entries more cryptic. Then he found one that made his blood run cold. If anything ever happens to me, tell Malik the truth. He needs to know before it's too late. His hands trembled as he read the words over and over. What truth? What was his mother trying to tell him? And why did it sound like she knew something bad was coming before it even happened? Malik's fingers gripped the edge of the diary as his heart pounded. His mother had been trying to tell him something important, something dangerous. But what did she mean? What truth? His stomach twisted at the thought that she might have known something before she died. He swallowed hard and turned the page, his eyes scanning for more clues. The next entry was dated only a few months before she passed. I am scared. I don't know who to trust. I never wanted Malik or Carter to find out like this, but I have no choice. If I don't do something soon, I fear it will be too late. I just hope when the time comes, they will understand why I had to keep this secret. Malik's breath hitched. His mother had been afraid. Of what? Of who? His mind raced through possibilities, but none of them made sense. His mother was the kindest, most caring person he knew. What could she have possibly been caught up in? A sudden creak from outside his bedroom made him freeze. He shut the diary quickly and stuffed it under his pillow. His door cracked open, and his father stood in the dim hallway, his face shadowed in the low light. "You're still up?" Mr. Carter's voice was hoarse, tired. Malik forced himself to breathe normally. "Yeah, just thinking." His father nodded slowly and hesitated, before stepping inside. "I know it's been hard without your mom." His voice cracked slightly. "I think about her every second." Malik studied his father's face, noticing the deep lines of exhaustion. He wanted to tell him about the diary, to ask about the truth his mother was so desperate for him to know, but something held him back. His father had already lost so much. What if this only made things worse? Instead, he nodded. "I miss her too." His father sighed and patted his shoulder before heading back to his room. Malik waited until he heard the door close, then pulled the diary back out. He had to figure this out, but he couldn't do it alone. There was only one person he could trust to help him, his best friend, Trey. The next morning, Malik met Trey behind the old basketball court near their school. Trey was the only person who understood him, the only one who didn't try to tell him how to grieve. He listened. And right now, Malik needed that more than anything. Trey frowned as he flipped through the diary. "Man, this is wild. Your mom was hiding something serious." "I know," Malik whispered. "But I don't know what." Trey rubbed the back of his neck. "She said she didn't know who to trust. What if she meant your dad?" Malik's stomach twisted at the thought. No way. My dad loved her. He's been messed up since she died." "I'm just saying," Trey said carefully. "What if she found out something about him or about someone close to him?" Malik didn't want to believe it, but deep down, he knew he couldn't ignore the possibility. His mother had been scared. If she had kept this secret even from his father, there had to be a reason. Later, that night, Malik went back to the attic. He searched through the boxes again, hoping for another clue. Then, hidden beneath a pile of old clothes, he found something that made his heart stop. A small metal safe, locked tight. His hands trembled as he picked it up, Whatever was inside, his mother had gone to great lengths to keep it hidden. He needed to open it, but just as he was about to move, he heard footsteps. His father's. Panic surged through him. He shoved the safe back under the clothes and hurried downstairs, trying to act normal. But his father's expression was strange when he saw him. "What were you doing up there?" his father asked, his voice cautious. Malik hesitated. "Just looking at Mom's things." His father studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Malik, I know you miss her. I do too. But some things are better left alone." Malik swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" His father looked away, as if debating whether to say more. Then he shook his head. "Go get some sleep." But Malik couldn't sleep. His father's reaction only confirmed what he feared. There was something he wasn't saying. The next day, he and Trey met again. Trey's cousin worked at a hardware store, so getting a lock-picking set wasn't too hard. That night, Malik crept back up to the attic, his hands shaking as he worked on the safe. It took longer than he expected, but finally, with a soft click, the lock gave way. Inside were stacks of papers, old photos, and something even more shocking. A phone. Not just any phone, but his mother's phone. The one she had before she died. Malik's breath caught in his throat. How was this here? His father had told him it had been lost. His fingers trembled as he turned it on. The screen flickered, low on battery, but it powered up. A few messages were still saved. He clicked on the last one she had sent, and his blood turned cold. "I know the truth. You have to stop before it's too late." It had been sent to his father. Malik's heart pounded so loudly, he thought it might burst from his chest. His mother had been warning his father. About what? About who? Then, before he could react, he heard something that made his blood freeze. The sound of his father's voice behind him. "Malik," his father said softly. Malik turned slowly, the phone still in his hands. His father stood in the doorway, his face unreadable, but his eyes. There was something in his eyes that Malik had never seen before. Fear. And that was when Malik realized his mother had been right. There was a secret, and now he was in danger too. Malik's breath caught in his throat as he locked eyes with his father. The attic suddenly felt smaller, the air too thick to breathe. His father took a slow step forward, his gaze shifting from Malik to the phone in his hands. "Where did you find that?" His father's voice was low, controlled, but Malik could hear the tension underneath. Malik tightened his grip on the phone. "In Mom's things," he said, barely above a whisper. His father let out a long breath and ran a hand over his face. "Malik, you don't understand." "Then make me understand," Malik snapped, his voice shaking. "Mom was scared. She knew something. She sent you a message, warning you." "What was she talking about?" His father hesitated, then sat down on an old wooden trunk, looking suddenly exhausted. "Your mother was trying to protect you," he said. "From me." Malik's stomach twisted. "What?" His father looked down at his hands. "She found out something about my past, something I tried to leave behind. And when she did, she didn't know if she could trust me anymore." Malik's mind raced. His father wasn't violent. He wasn't a bad person. He had loved Malik's mother with everything he had. But then why had she been so afraid? Trey's words from the other day echoed in his mind. What if she found out something about him? His father let out another shaky breath. "Before you were born, I did some things I'm not proud of," he admitted. "I got involved with some dangerous people. But when your mother and I got together, I promised her I would walk away from all of it, and I did. For a long time, Malik's heart pounded. Then why was she scared? His father closed his eyes for a moment before answering. Because they came back, he said. I thought I was done with them. But a few months before she passed, she found out they had been watching us. She begged me to go to the police, but I couldn't. If I did, they would have hurt you, hurt her. Malik's throat felt dry. Did they have something to do with what happened to her? His father looked away, his jaw tight. I don't know, he admitted. She was in an accident. That's what they told us. But the timing, the way she had just confronted me about it, I can't say for sure. Malik felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. His mother's death. It might not have been an accident at all. A heavy silence filled the attic. His father looked at him, his eyes filled with regret. I wanted to tell you, he said, but I was afraid. I thought if I kept you away from it, you'd be safe. Malik stared at the phone in his hands. His mother had known something was wrong. She had tried to warn his father, tried to protect him. And now, Malik had to make sure her fight wasn't for nothing. His father suddenly straightened, his body tensing. We have to go, he said, his voice urgent. Malik blinked. Go where? His father's eyes flicked to the attic door. They must know you found this by now, he said, nodding toward the phone. They've been watching. If they think you're digging into the past, they won't just sit back. A chill ran down Malik's spine. You mean, they'll come after us? His father didn't answer. He didn't have to. The look in his eyes said everything. Malik's pulse thundered in his ears as he shoved the phone into his pocket. His father grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the attic door. But before they could take another step, they heard it. Tires screeching outside. A car had just pulled up. His father's grip on his arm tightened. It's them! Malik's breath came in short gasps as they rushed down the stairs. His father snatched the house keys and grabbed a bag from the hallway. Malik didn't even know what was inside. He didn't care. All he knew was that they had to get out. The front doorknob rattled. Someone was outside. His father turned, his eyes darting toward the back door. Come on, he whispered. They slipped, through the kitchen and out the back, running down the alleyway behind their house. The night was cold, but Malik's skin burned with adrenaline. His father pulled out his phone and dialed a number. It's me, he said. We need help. Now! Malik didn't know who he was calling, but he didn't care. He just ran, his heart hammering, his mother's words echoing in his head. He needs to know before it's too late. And now, he finally did. It wasn't just grief that had been weighing his father down these past few weeks. It was guilt, regret, fear. They kept running until headlights flashed at the end of the street. A black car. Malik's chest tightened. But then another set of lights appeared. A second car pulling up fast. His father pulled him behind a dumpster, holding a hand over Malik's shoulder as they watched. The two cars faced each other, engines rumbling in the night. Then, a door opened from the second car. A tall man stepped out, his face unreadable. Malik didn't recognize him, but his father let out a breath of relief. Stay here, his father whispered. Malik didn't want him to go, but he nodded. His father stepped forward, meeting the man in the middle of the street. They spoke in low voices, and Malik couldn't make out what they were saying. But then, the black car's door opened, and someone inside handed over a file. A moment later, the car peeled off into the night. Malik's father turned back, clutching the file in his hands. His face was pale, but his eyes were determined. It's over, he said. We have proof now. Enough to end this. Malik let out a shaky breath. Mom, she was right. His father swallowed hard. She always was. They walked away. From the alley, the weight of the past, still heavy, but no longer unbearable. Malik knew things wouldn't be easy. His father had a long way to go to make things right, but at least now they had a chance. And for the first time since his mother's death, Malik felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope.